at the end of the Ice Age, agriculture became common in the East, and native people stayed in one spot, planting crops, and allowed them to stay in one spot, and these giant cities could exist, thank you to agriculture. People would carry things from far, far away. They would bring them back to these places where no one had seen this kind of thing before. From the coastal areas, people carried shells, which could be used in making horns. And in the mountains here, no one had ever had these before. Can you imagine what someone could do at the top of that mountain right there? Send out the warning. Who are these strangers who have entered our world? This was a lookout point, a spot where people probably had ceremony even, because at the top there at once a medicine wheel had been built. And so a very special place, Stone Mountain. Using shells like this, they could create signal. One way could be a warning. One way could call you as a meeting or ceremony. My shell blowing today let you know when we were starting and called you over maybe. And so shells like that would have been valuable. In the Great Lakes, native people had copper nuggets that they carried and traded down in the south. Mica was a common trade item. Different types of rocks that could break easy to make good tools. Soft stones like soapstone was prized in making pipes and such. And so these kinds of things were things that people had where they lived, and they carried them from place to place in trade. Ideas began to spread, and also seeds began to spread from one hand to the next. Native people spread these seeds, and we became farming communities on the eastern United States. The oldest language of the South here, Muskogean. And in Muskogean language, we are the people of the swamp. We say hello to you in our way, like this. Hinchjay. Can you say that? Hinchjay. A lot different than saying how, isn't it? We really don't say how. The tribe that says that is, I call it the TV tribe. You know about them, don't you? Sometimes television makes people think all native people lived in a teepee lodge. Tribes on the eastern United States never had that house. That's out west in the prairie. For the constant movement following the buffalo. When the buffalo herds moved, the tribes followed. That was their food. When the United States realized they could get rid of the buffalo, it would make those tribes surrender and go to reservations. That ended their way of life, the life of the teepee. The word teepee is in the Lakota language. It means the dwelling. But in the eastern United States, our houses were quite different. Being farming communities, not having to move, staying in one spot, our homes became very large, very permanent. I have only built a small hunter's camp, a lean-to, a hoodie, a small shelter that the hunters built. But back in our village, our chicky or chico was quite large. Say that, chico, or chiqui. Our home was very big. Some of them had roofs made of the leaves of the palms if you lived around the swampy areas. Up here in this area, in the north, there are no palms. Here, tribal people would use bark. Tribes like the Creek and Cherokee built bark roofs on their houses as well. Bark can be taken off the trees in large pieces. We would use antlers as wedges and little chisels to get the bark off the tree in a large piece that won't break. We would soak it in water for many, many days and let it get wet and lay rocks on it so it would dry flat. Then we would use it on the roof of a house, just like shingles today. Our huts were sometimes open on the bottom to allow the fresh air inside, keeping it nice and cool. Some of our chickies had walls made of wattle and daub. Wattle is where we take sticks and weave it like a basket is woven. Daub is where we took mud and clay and plastered it on, and we made a hard wall. And so our homes being very permanent, not for moving around. Our life revolved around the crops, the corn, not hunting and following animals. Our hunting season was the winter, when the animals had less parasites and sicknesses, the winter season. The spring was the growing season where we planted the crop. The summer was when we took that crop and we celebrated our new year, our green corn. And in the fall was the drying season. We would have the food hung in the sun, drying out so it could last through the winter. That is why the corn is hung there. You see all different colors of corn there because that's what corn was, many colors. Some was very small, many varieties. We also took the bark of the tree and not just used it for the roof of a house, but we used it to make buckets, like this bucket I have here. And don't worry, girls, I haven't forgotten you. There you go. The original Gucci. Yeah. You can even take the bark of a tree and use it to make rope. This rope right here is made from the inside bark of the tree, known as the cambium layer. Something else native people would make rope with in this area, say it with me, yucca.
Yucca.
Yucca grows all around the mountain area here. The yucca is a plant, very useful plant, I might say. You see all these little hairs sticking out there, and that means it's a good rope making plant. Now this is not yucca like you buy in a store, okay? This is a different variety, okay? This is yucca. Now you can take the leaf and twist it, and you can make some really strong rope. And that rope would then be used to make our fishing lines and fishing nets and tying things together. You can take the root of the plant and make soap with it. You can take the stem of the plant, and it's the best wood there is in the woods for rubbing sticks together and making fire the old way. So quite useful plant. You got rope, fire, and you got soap with it. The only thing you don't want to do is eat it. Remember, it's yucca. Yeah, that's what it tastes like. Now we did use everything of nature. We could show you what plant was food and poison, which plant you could rub on your skin and stop the bugs from biting, like the beautyberry bush back there, or the dog fennels and different plants we knew. The roots of the willow was where aspirin came from today. The sassafras plant, all the different plants we could tell you their medicine and their uses of, because that's how we knew the earth. That's how long this had been our home. All the rivers here of Georgia and Alabama and South Carolina that have those names you don't pronounce very good, those were all the different tribes. When the English came here, they chased the Spanish out. The Spanish had come here in 1539. And in 1539, Hernando de Soto, looking for gold, marched right through here. He stayed his first winter with a tribe south of here in Florida called the Appalachian. And when he was exploring here, up here looking for gold, later the natives realized this man is trying to make slaves and trying to find the gold, and whoever he could capture he would. He had no bounds. And so finally we began attacking back, and he was eventually killed. His body was dumped in the Mississippi River. The survivors of Hernando de Soto would go back to Spain, and they will make maps. Some of the earliest maps of the land was of the Spanish explorers. And when they write the map, they write the word Appalachia, the tribe they spent their first winter with in Florida. But they mistakenly write it up where the mountains are. And that's how the mountains here in the eastern United States got their name, the Appalachian Mountains. As they marched through, we had never seen a gun before. No one had ever heard their words before, hola. No one had ever seen armor before. Who are these strangers riding these animals and carrying such beasts with them? A cow, a horse, a pig, a chicken, a goat. These were animals they had brought, and as we saw them, it was frightening. The Spanish named this land Florida for its beautiful flowers. But as the Spanish were chased out of here in the late 1600s and the English took control over the territories, General Oglethorpe wanted to make this a colony between South Carolina and the Spanish of St. Augustine. And so he went to an old chief of the Yamacraw people. Today you might know that place as Savannah. His name was Tomochichi. He was in his 90s when he met General Oglethorpe, and he welcomed the English basically and became friends with them. He realized their power and their strength. And as they had chased the Spanish out, he had become their friend. And they named the land Georgia in honor of the King of England, King George. Tomochichi was taken to England by General Oglethorpe to meet King George, and the very famous paintings we see today in our history books of him. In this wampum belt you'll see is a copy of the wampum belt that he carried with him, a sign of friendship, that we would help the English in their endeavors. They would bring us missionaries like the Methodist religion. That's how it came to America, was here in Georgia with John Wesley visiting the Muskogee or Creeks. And so that would be something we would learn. The white man's words of writing and speaking, our children will now learn and be educated. He established fair trading to our tribes with only licensed traders. And so they could establish trading posts in our camps, and we could get their things easy now. We like the things the English had. Who wants to live like a caveman your whole life? Nobody. When we saw the shiny things, when we saw the bright cloths, when we saw the metal knives and the metal axe, and we saw the metal cooking pot, nobody wanted to live the old way. We stopped breaking the rocks. The boys forgot how their grandpa made an arrowhead. We stopped making the clay pot. The girls forgot how to make the oldest clay cooking pots in the United States, here in Georgia. And so we stopped these old practices, and we started welcoming the trade. You notice the deerskin